Wouldn't it be great if you could actually find a way in order to build passive income, but also be able to live financially free, debt free, by actually purchasing your house, your principal place of residence, debt free? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Keep watching. Hey guys, my name's Ravi Sharma and I'm the founder and buyer's agent here at Search Property. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another episode of Search Property TV. If you're new here, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course the bell icon if you want to be notified when knowledge like this gets dropped on YouTube. Now, it does go a long way into supporting the channel, so I do definitely appreciate it. Now, in this video, to illustrate my point, I am bringing back the very loved John the Legend from my last video. If you guys haven't watched that, you should definitely go check that out before you watch this video, because this video is going to make little to no sense. So definitely go check out that first. I'll have a link in the description below, as well as a little card that pops up here. But to recap, John the Legend was up against Jane, and really these two people represent a wider community, a thought process really. There's no person named John and there's no person named Jane that I know of that goes through this, but it does represent a class of people that are actually doing this. It's a thought process, it's a way of thinking and a mindset that we as individuals think, but we are actually taught this from a certain place. Now, it could be our parents, could be our uncles, could be our siblings, or our social circles. And it of course comes down to who you listen to and contextually listen to. It's not good enough in 2021 or 2022, whenever you're watching this, that you listen to people just for the sake of listening to them. I want you to question the context behind what they're saying. A lot of people come here onto the YouTube channel and say, well, look at this guy. He's talking about real estate and how it's all moving up because he's a buyer's agent. Now that's using context and that's great, but I'm not here to sell you a service. In fact, I'm here to try and bring out as many videos as I can to then help people at scale. Now, scale is very important to me, right? So me bringing out these videos on YouTube, okay, that might get you to want to inquire about my business. However, that's not the intention here. The intention here is to help at scale. I unfortunately can't get on the phone with every one of you to discuss your strategy and what the best way to move forward is. And if you do like this sort of content, you can take it a step further. I've got an online course, you should definitely go check that out. But this is not a means for me to go plug that. I'm actually here to go, hey, this might be a good avenue to you to save time, rather than going out there and trying to listen to every certain person and then you're caught up in analysis paralysis because you don't know which way to go. So that's my intentions about being here, if you were very unclear with that, because I have been responding. I try and respond to every comment that comes on. So if you are liking the content that comes out of this channel, definitely leave a comment down below. I do answer every single comment that comes through, and it's my way of at least giving back, having some sort of communication and letting me know what you guys like and what you don't. Now we're going to jump into what John the Legend is trying to do. Now, before I get hit by some copyright thing, it's John the Legend, not John Legend, the guy who sings songs. It's definitely not that. In fact, with John, what we are trying to focus on here in this video is to how he gets from purchasing those investments and then now moving towards his exit strategy, which is now trying to purchase his family home, his dream home, whatever you like to call it, the forever home, and how to do it debt free. So I'm going to show you exactly how that's done in this video. Now, I will also give love to Jane. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you what she could possibly do after she's gone and made that decision. Because a lot of people here, have already gone and made that decision to go take advantage of the grants, go and purchase a home, but then not really know, how do I come back out of it? I've literally had in the last 2 weeks, maybe 10 or 12 emails that have come through going, I've now discovered your YouTube channel. I wish I discovered it 6 months ago, because I'm in a position where I've already made that mistake. I've already done something that may not have been the best move. How do I get out of it? What are my next steps? How do I move forward in order to get financial freedom? Whoever I was listening to really gave me that information. Now I like this approach better. And so this is where I'm going to illustrate that at the end of this video. So be sure to keep watching. So again, a reminder, definitely go watch that video about principal place of residence or investing in 2021 in the Australian real estate market, so you know some context behind what we're talking about here. But essentially, John went out and he ended up purchasing a couple of investments, right? Now, what we can see in this scenario is that he's now not owning a home. He's going to continue renting. So you may be familiar with, I guess, the concept of rent vesting, right? So he is rent vesting. Now, a lot of people ask me, what is rent vesting? Well, it's exactly this, right? It's going, I'm not going to buy a house to live in. Instead, I'm going to continue renting right? And that's the rent part. And then I'm gonna go in and invest, right? Invest in strategic locations that provide me what I feel like would be closer to financial freedom and passive income, right? Now, in order to do that, renting, you could then go on to rent a place that you really like, a location that you really like. And it might be for a short-term period, right? So you might go, look, I've always wanted to live on the northern beaches of Sydney, or I've always really wanted to go and live in the country somewhere. So instead of committing to buying a home there, because we know real estate is not liquid, we know it takes time to go and settle on the property, find a buyer, find a seller, and so that process itself is lengthy. So instead, what we can do is go and rent in locations, really try and figure out what locations do we like? What are the amenities that we really value? And at different points in your life, you're gonna value different things. Like for instance, I'm 28, right? And I have no intentions to have kids in the next couple of years. So for me, being around a really good school doesn't really mean anything. The return on investment there is zero. However, if we look in 10 years from now, we could potentially be looking at options that have housing near particular schools. So this is where we take context. You purchasing that first property and then thinking, well, okay, I've now purchased my home and I'm house proud and I've got the sign up saying sold, right? And then I can flex on Instagram. Well, how's that gonna work out in 5 or 10 years time? Now, I'm gonna show you at the end, but we're taking this approach with John, which is exactly what approach I'm taking, is I go and rent a property. And then I go and invest in these particular properties in good locations. People often say rent is dead money. But is it really? And this is what we're going to try and figure out. Because let's say you're renting a property, right? Now, let's say the property costs you $600 per week, right? Now that is what people will say is dead money, because this money goes and pays your landlord's mortgage. So that's going to go pay the landlord's mortgage. So this effectively could have been your mortgage that you're paying down. However, what you're not considering is you probably have this property and you have this property. Now, who's paying these? Your tenants. So now they're effectively going and putting the dead money into your account and paying down your mortgage. So it's almost like a cycle, right? It's going this money that comes in from you, from the tenant, right? So the tenant goes towards your investment, and that money will go and flow into you paying your rent, which then flows into your landlord's mortgage. Now, to illustrate what I'm trying to say here is this property here that you live in may not be the right property to invest in right now. Let me explain that. This property might be in, let's say, Sydney, for example, in 2018, right? 2017, 2018, we started seeing the peak of the Sydney market. So most people said, well, this couldn't ever let loose. We could never see this market drop. Well, it dropped. And not only did it drop, but it's moved sideways ever since. Now we're seeing some sort of artificial growth, asset price inflation, but that's for a different video. What we're seeing is that if you ended up purchasing this property here, you would have found that instead of me paying rent somewhere, I can now put this towards my own mortgage. However, you're now paying this money in what you call is an asset, right? Hoping that this will go up in price. Now, you purchased this in 2017 in Sydney, right? And let's say it cost you 600K. What's the price in 2020? What's the price in 2021? Well, I can tell you because I know a lot of people who did this. So the price was 600,000. Wow, Ravi. Okay, so what am I saying here? I'm saying that if you decided, hey, renting is a loser's game, renting is dead money, I want to go put it up on Instagram saying, I just bought my first home, look at me, amazing. Okay, but if you purchase something in 2017 in the Sydney market, and then in 2020, 2021, it's now still sitting at that same value, some people might go, well, that's okay because I'm paying down my mortgage. No, it's not okay. Because if we had used this portion, right, whether that's made up of a component of your loan and your own cash, if this was able to be purchased across these two properties here, then this 600 might be, well, let's use an average growth that I saw in my portfolio, about 10%. So yearly, right? So that's 60K, 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 and that's 3 years, which is $180,000, right? So now you're telling me this money which could have been spent on renting a place in that same location you were going to buy in, is okay because it moved sideways and I paid down my mortgage. However, you could have just bought 2 investment properties, which would have gone up. Example, obviously, is $180,000 across 3 years. And you're saying to me, this is the only option, that rent is dead money. This whole generalization around there is one rule and that's it. I'm not even saying that this is the only rule. I'm not even saying this is the only way to get there. And I'm going to explain that in Jane's situation in a moment. But what I'm trying to get you to guys think about is to try and break through what was taught to us, what we learned by people who contextually knew what they were talking about. You know, our parents buying houses 15, 20 years ago. Well, if they haven't bought property in today's market and they don't live like in their 20s, 30s and 40s, it becomes irrelevant, right? And this is the point I'm trying to make, is there is no one rule to get you to financial freedom. So to illustrate and summarize this entire point that I'm trying to make is that your tenants, right, are paying you rent. Once they pay you rent, you go and take that rent and you pay down your investments, right? You're paying down your council rates, you're paying down your water rates, and possibly your mortgage repayments. So once you're doing that in your investments here, that investment that was based purely on numbers in a strategic location has both cash flow and capital growth. So those things are going up. Now, you then use your money, that's surplus, and of course your salary and income that you receive, to pay your rent. Now, people often say this is dead money because this goes into paying down your landlord's mortgage. What people want to see is going, well, instead, why don't you purchase your own home, right? And if you purchase your own home, you can pay yourself. You can pay down your own asset, right? However, if you do this, most likely cannot get that. And so see how it's not just about understanding that rent is dead money. It's not the case. And this is what I'm trying to show you, that there are other ways to get there. Now, the part that you've been waiting for is how do we go to the next step? How does John go from investing in 2 properties or 3 properties and then his exit strategy into purchasing his final home? And I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so we know that John went and purchased 2 investment properties. Now that's an example. He could potentially have purchased more or he could have potentially purchased less. However, to illustrate, I'm going to show you that John ended up purchasing 2 in that first year. Once he purchased the 2 investments, he is continuing to rent, right? He's continuing to RENTVEST. He's now got this portfolio building in the background. He's building this machine, is how I like to call it on the strategy sessions, is he's got the machine that is now growing in the back. He's using his income, saving his income. The extra cash flow is coming into this savings account so that he can build another level of deposit to go into his next investment. Now, of course, we need to figure out if, you know, his income's high enough so that he can get, you know, lending and to be able to borrow for the next properties. However, for this example, we're going to assume that he can, right? And that every year that his income's going up because he's working up the corporate ladder or whatever he's doing, right? So we go year 1, he's purchased these investments, he continues renting. Now year 2 or year 5, right? It's going to take him a couple of years to now build out that foundation. For some people that have a large amount of capital and have large income, they can do this a lot quicker than someone that's starting out. They purchase their first property, they might have to sit on there for like, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, build enough income, build enough equity, and then go again, right? This process is completely based on your own situation. However, in John's case, he's gone and got some promotions at work, he's working his way up, and there's some equity in these properties. So he goes and uses the equity to go and purchase these properties here. Now he's using a combination of his equity that's grown, he's using a portion of his savings. So he goes and purchases these 2 properties. So he's investing, he's building a portfolio while he's paying someone else's mortgage, right? Dead money. He's renting somewhere, so he's RENTVESTing. Now, is this a good strategy? Well, this is the strategy I'm taking on, right? And the reason for that is because when he gets to the point where he wants to now settle down, maybe he's now gone, okay, I've now built enough wealth through my investments, and now I'm looking at purchasing my home. Again, all these numbers are based on your situation. If you're looking at living somewhere near the beach in Sydney, well, you're probably going to fork out $2-3 million. Now, if you want to go and live somewhere else, maybe it's in a country town, or maybe you want to live in, you know, the outskirts of Brisbane, something like that, you might be looking at $600,000 to $800,000. It's very different, right? So of course, how many properties you need is very different as well. This is why it's so important to have a strategy. When you're going in, there is two things that you want to be achieving. One, financial freedom, of course. And two, you want to live debt-free. It's your biggest expense ever. Your living expenses are your biggest expense. And so what you want to do is not only have enough passive income to, do your lifestyle, but you also want that to be covering your living expenses. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. You have enough generated in terms of income and rent to then go, well, I can now buy a house with a loan, and I can use the extra cash flow to then go and pay down my mortgage. So I'm not actually feeling anything. I can continue working, but the extra cash flow that's being built around my portfolio can now go towards paying down my mortgage for my principal place of residence. Now, in that situation, you might be happy because your expenses are really low, you've still got a mortgage, and your property portfolio is taking care of most of the work. So you're not as stressed out with the job you do. I personally would take another route. I take another option. My option, I would build a portfolio that ensures that my money, cash on cash return every year is growing. It's compound growth, okay? So what I would do is then go, okay, well, let's say I need to purchase this debt-free, okay? Debt-free. I feel like I have to write it down because so many people are trying to get out of debt. Now, in a time where we've got an inflationary period going on, what you want to be doing is getting into debt. If you want to know exactly how to go through the next 5 years and really build some wealth, right? And I'm talking real wealth that you probably would not have ever thought about, then definitely leave me a comment down below saying debt free, okay? And I'm going to make that video for you. But essentially what we want to do is go, okay, this is our principal place of residence. I want to buy this debt free. And we probably got a window of 10 to 15 years, possibly longer, possibly shorter. So if it is 10 to 15 years, are you going to have paid off these loans? No, because most of your loans will be taken out on a 30-year mortgage rate, right? So if you're going to take it out on a mortgage term of 30 years, in 10 to 15 years, you're not going to have it paid down. However, if these properties all grow, right, and they're all growing, you can get to the option of saying, well, you know what? The properties I purchased in year one have actually grown significantly because I thought about where I was going to buy. I didn't base that on emotion to try and get some homeowner grants. I purchased in a location where demand was high, supply was low. Now, I don't care where it is. It just made sense. The numbers make sense. It was no emotion because I wasn't going to live in the property. So these properties have grown. And now what you can possibly do is go, I'm going to sell these two properties, and the profits will allow me to buy this debt-free. Now, of course, numbers, before I get the haters come out and say, no, these numbers don't make sense. They're not going to double in 10 to 15 years. Where are you planning to live? This is an example. This is to illustrate how this can work. It's just a tactic, okay? This is my exit strategy. If I sat here and started making numbers and how it all works, you're going to get confused. So I'd rather show you the principles. You can fill in the numbers yourself. If you don't know how to, you can look in the description below and there's a course. You can build out your own strategy. If that doesn't work, you can reach out to me. Of course, at the moment, we are swamped. I'm not sure when you're watching this, or we're probably swamped in the future too, I don't know. But essentially what we're trying to do here is go, well, I'm still gonna have a portfolio, right? And that's still gonna create equity, it's gonna create wealth for myself, but now I've used the profits, right? The profits, and I've used the profits to now pay down whatever this property is, right? The dream home, and buy it debt-free, buying it with cash, okay? It's such a foreign concept for everyone to go, well, you're telling me I'm gonna buy a house that I'm gonna live in, let's say $600,000. You're saying I'm gonna buy it with cash? Whoa, that's not possible, because if I continue saving and my partner and I, we're both saving, we're not gonna get to 600K. We're not gonna do that in 10 years. Exactly. And that's the point of investing, because if you're able to go and put $1 in and you just save that, well, that's going to grow at say 2 or 3%. But if I can put $1 in, leverage that, and buy an investment property, right? Then the investment property is going to grow higher and a lot quicker, even though it might be say 3 or 4%, it's on leveraged income. It's on leveraged asset, right? So if my $1 buys me a house for $10, 3% of $10 is significantly higher of 3% of $1. You see, it's 10 times that return. And so that's what I'm trying to say, is that your net cash on cash return is what's important. If you can do that time and time again, it's not about trying to get 10 or 15 properties and say, yes, I'm a gazillionaire. No. Let's bring it down to the basics. You want to live a life of choice, financial freedom, own your house debt-free. This is how you can do it. This is just one way though. And this is where I come out and I try and give you as much context as possible. But if I go, what if, and then the pros and cons of that, and then the pros and cons of that, you're gonna get bored because these videos are gonna be like 3 hours long. So I try and prove a point and I try and illustrate that with context. Now we're going to talk about what Jane can possibly do to get out of her situation. Now, thank you for sticking all the way through here, guys. I promise you this will bring you a lot of value. But if you are like Jane, who went and purchased her first property as the principal place of residence, there is still hope. There is still a way out, okay? Now this comes down to exactly where she's purchased. Now, again, context. If she's living somewhere in Sydney and she ended up purchasing in 2017, 2018, or even now, and you purchased a unit in a high dense population area because you think it's gonna grow, well, have a look at how many cranes are in the area and how much supply is coming into the system. You're gonna have no growth. So if she goes and purchases an area like that, well, I can tell you now, it's a shit purchase because in the short term, you're gonna have limiting choices around what you can do. Your cash flow is gonna be crap because if you decide now, I'm gonna rent this out, I'm gonna go move back home, right, with my mum and dad, or I'm going to go and rent now because I've now taken advantage of the homeowner's grant and now I have an investment. This is not an investment. This was purchased with emotion because you had to live in that property, right? So if you're gonna purchase with emotion, how much do you think you're gonna think about the numbers there? You're gonna go, well, emotions first, numbers are second. And there entails why this will not be a high investment grade property, right? This is why I can ensure that when I'm purchasing an investment, it's purely on numbers and why I know that is going to perform better than most of these properties that get purchased as first home owner grants and then go and flip it into an investment. It doesn't work like that. You can't have best of both worlds. However, if you are living in an area that has those fundamentals, that it's actually a good property to purchase and the supply and demand makes sense, well, then you're going to get best of both worlds. If you're in an area that, has significantly high demand relative to its supply, and you know the cash flow is really good, you do those numbers before you purchase it. You now know that you can go and purchase, get the equity growth, right? You'll get the equity and you'll get the cash flow, right? And if you can get both, then you're able to go in, you get the grants, right? You get the cash flow because you know that vacancy rates are low in the area, and you're able to get the equity because demand is higher than supply. That is the perfect situation to be in. Now, if you are in that situation, amazing. Good luck to you, you'll do really well. However, most people are not in that situation, but they're thinking like Jane. And this is what that whole video was around. If you haven't seen that video, this probably didn't make too much sense. Definitely go watch that now if you haven't already. This video was to illustrate that it's not all lost, right? Even if she goes and now says, well, you know what, I made the mistake, I've now gone and I'm starting to rent, or I'm starting to now live at home again, your borrowing capacity will increase. Now, finding a tenant, I don't know, because you've obviously got to look at vacancy and how much supply is on the market for both equity and cash flow. So those are the things that you need to really consider when you're looking at Jane's situation and when you're looking at John's situation. This again is all educational, it's my thoughts, and these videos are intended for you to just question the system, question what we were taught, and look beyond that. Use this video to actually be insightful to go, now, oh, maybe I should look into what he's talking about. Not just take my word for it, actually use your due diligence, understand, learn. That's how we're gonna grow, guys. Thank you so much for sticking all the way through. I know it's a lengthy video, but I really do appreciate it. I hope you got some value out of it.